Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. We are changing lives one woman at a time. In fact, we are changing the world one woman at a time. I'm Cynthia James. I'm your host, and I am so grateful to be here. I get the opportunity to introduce you to amazing women, women that inspire me, women that are making a difference on this planet, women that are passionate and have a calling. So today, my guest is someone who has been in my life for quite some time. I'm in awe of her. I love what she's doing. And so her name is Nadine Cornish Roberts. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She's the founder of the Caregiver's Guardian, consulting service dedicated to supporting, guiding, and advocating for family caregivers. She's a freedom coach, one of my coaches that I trained. She's a certified senior advisor and an elite life coach. She is the author of Tears in My Gumbo, The Caregiver's Recipe for Resilience, and her new book that's just coming out now, Prayers in My Gumbo, The Caregiver's Recipe for Peace. Nadine, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here with my mentor and very, very dear friend, Miss Cynthia James.
Well, I wanted to have you on, I want to talk about your new book in a minute, but I really want to talk about your journey, because a lot of people feel like, they come in and they know their purpose, and then that's it, but your purpose evolved in a different kind of way. So could you talk about that?
Absolutely. So I was doing my life and living on purpose, so I thought, when my mother was diagnosed with a pituitary brain tumor. And everything changed in that moment. And literally, the trajectory of my life shifted from working in the field of public health as a social marketing consultant and expert to being a full-time caregiver while still working as well. And so that ultimately turned into a 15-year journey. And it shifted everything for me. And that journey of caring for my mom, advocating for her, really laid the groundwork for the work that I really was here to do, right? So ultimately, I would become a caregiver coach and consultant as a result of the 15-year journey caring for my mom.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I loved about reading your first book, was really the transformation that took place within you while you were caregiving. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I really enlightened caregivers about is the fact that the caregiving journey that we work so hard to change is actually designed to change us. And when we do caregiving well, we are transformed by the experience. And ultimately, we morph into a different person, a different level of love, a different level of caring, a different way of being, and our priorities change because we really get in touch with what's important. And what I like to share is that we learn that caregiving is ultimately God's work. And so we are handmaids in terms of supporting God's vision for our lives and the vision that God has for those that we're caring for.
Yeah. It's also a spiritual journey. It's like, it doesn't matter what religion you're in or if you even practice any religion, something is happening to your spirit while you're in the midst of all of this.
Absolutely. You are shifting, you are changing, you are growing, you are sometimes in pain because you want things to be different than what they are. You don't like the trajectory, you don't like where things are going, and you're in resistance. You're in resistance for your loved one, you're in resistance for yourself because you want a different reality. But that is not what's happening. What's happening is that we are being invited to shift and to mold ourselves into a new being around acceptance and surrendering to the scenario that we find ourselves in.
Absolutely. So people come in crisis. People come challenged, confused, not knowing what to do. And so I want to know, first of all, what do you do to prepare yourself to be with people that are going through this?
Well, I absolutely have to ground myself in prayer. I have to remember to breathe because that energy that's being brought to the table, I'm affected by that. And I have to be grounded. I have to really be shored up in my own physical, mental, and emotional well-being in order to be in a position to adequately support someone who's coming in oftentimes in a crisis situation.
Yeah. And so, what's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest challenge that you've encountered doing this work?
Hmm, I would say self-care
Ah,
and ensuring that self-care is as much the priority in my life as I really encourage it to be in the lives of all of those that I support. You know, we as women, we tend to be pretty notorious for putting ourselves on the back burner. But, you know, through my work with you over the last, 6 or 7 years now, I really have come to grips with the fact that self-care is non-negotiable. It is absolutely non-negotiable. And if I'm not taking care of me, then I'm not setting the example that I need to set for those that I'm supporting, for those caregivers. They need to look at me and they need to see somebody who is actively, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally taking care of myself first and foremost. And also something else that I learned from you that I share with the world is my calendar. My calendar is color coded and it reflects, if you can see this, it reflects my
yeah,
color.
there it is.
Yeah, and what do you think my color is? What's the dominant color on this calendar?
Blue.
Actually, red is more dominant.
Oh, really? Oh, I see
Yeah,
red.
yeah, you
Okay,
see that red now?
I
Okay,
do.
yeah. So red is my color, and that's something that you taught me. It's probably one of the 10 most important things you taught me, right? Is to make sure that I schedule myself on my own calendar. And so that is that's the greatest challenge for most of the caregivers that I work with on a day in and day out basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially now we're in a pandemic. It's like, how do we care for ourselves while we're doing this other stuff? Because everything's changed. It's
Exactly.
amazing. I want to talk about your books. So I want to talk about the first one, Tears in My Gumbo. First of all, why is that the title?
So, Tears in My Gumbo, my first Christmas without my mom, was also the first time I ever made gumbo by myself. It was the holidays. I was mourning. I was really, really grieving that loss, and I was in a really ugly state. And ultimately, again, being open to transformation, that process was so cathartic. It was so healing that I went from those ugly tears of grief to beautiful tears of joy because I was able to recreate my mother's pot of gumbo without a recipe. And that was a major, major, major feat. And literally tasting that gumbo and having it taste just like my mama's gumbo had me crying tears of joy. So that's why we have tears in my gumbo. I'm from New Orleans. Gumbo's in my DNA, and so it's been a really significant part of my life since I can remember.
So the tagline, the recipe for resilience, right? I mean, so it wasn't that you were just cooking the gumbo, you were cooking in your own um, journey of resilience and finding your new path.
Absolutely. Yes. It was unfolding before my very eyes because that day I tasted that gumbo and those tears rolled into that bowl. Spirit whispered, your first book is Tears in My Gumbo.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and it would be the first of many more to come.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this because, I know that there's a lot of people out here who want to write a book, in the middle of writing a book, wanting to get a book out there, and I want you to talk about your journey because some people just think that the writing of the book's the deal.
Right. And they think that that's the hard part, right? That they spend years writing and creating this masterpiece. And then when it's done, if it ever gets done, right? It's like they think that's where the work is. But no, once you open up and you say yes to the experience and you allow spirit to flow through you, as I was able to do with my book, once the decision was made to write the book, it was done literally in a matter of less than 3 months. Okay. That was the writing of the book. And then comes the entire process of figuring out, whether or not you're going to go with a major publisher or whether or not you're going to be an independent publisher or a self-publisher. And I ultimately chose, after talking to 3 major publishing houses, their time frame and my time frame did not mesh. And so I realized that in order for me to get this message out, I would need to independently publish my book. And so I began that journey. And so that was yet another experience unfolding where I had to learn and go through a process to effectively get my book out to the masses.
Right. The thing about it is whether you're with a well-known publisher, you're self-publishing, you are the responsible party for the marketing. You
Oh,
are. You are the responsible party for getting it in front of people and selling the book. And so for anybody who's listening, you want to get guidance, coaching somewhere to help you do that journey because the book comes from the heart, but
mhm.
the rest of it is there's strategy.
It's a strategy and it's a system. And I have to say that you were very instrumental in me moving through this process as opposed to waiting for a publishing house and really just about every phase of it. I was able to ask you questions and to consult with you and get the advice that I needed to move forward effectively on this particular path. And so I'm definitely appreciative, and I highly recommend those of you who are seeking to embark upon the writing journey and are self-publishing or identifying a publishing house, check in with Cynthia. She's got some really amazing information and insight because you've got 7 books under your belt now.
I do.
Yeah, yeah, you're a veteran at this now. So yeah, but it's a labor of love, but it's the work has only begun when you put the pen down.
I want to know about prayers in my gumbo. Why prayers in my gumbo?
Okay, so I always knew In My Gumbo was going to be a series, that there was going to be a joy in my gumbo. Because after tears, you got to talk about the joy in the process. So I knew there was going to be joy. I also knew there was going to be prayers, but I didn't know prayers was going to happen next. And the catalyst for that was a speaking engagement last year, Alzheimer's Association's conference. And after that conference, I asked for critiques. And there was one critique that was shared where a caregiver said that they didn't appreciate me talking about prayers. They didn't appreciate me talking about God. And I was stunned. I think I called you and had a conversation with you following that. And I was stunned, but immediately I began to be inspired with prayers. And I just started writing. I started writing because I knew that if a caregiver was saying that they had a problem with prayers, or they had a problem with whether they call God, it doesn't matter. But what they were not in touch with their spiritual source. And I knew that it was time to write Prayers in My Gumbo. And I also knew very shortly into the writing process that my prayers all sounded the same. And I was quickly led to identify contributors who would write and support this book. And so I'm thrilled you are one of the contributors, of course, to my book, Prayers in My Gumbo. And I have literally 39 other contributors from across the country, all who have had a caregiving experience, to share their spiritual journey and to share lessons learned and prayers, musings, thoughts around their caregiving journey.
It's so wonderful. And you know, and I got to tell you, I was surprised when I heard the person that didn't like you using the word prayer, because I know for my journey with my mother leaving the planet, you know, prayer and spiritual practice were the thing that kept me on the ground, you know, when I was trying to manage everything, including my emotions. So I'm so excited about this book. I'm so excited that people are going to have a resource that they can pull in and just get the prayers of so many people who have walked through this experience. So I want to know, how do people find you and how do they get your books?
Well, I can always be reached at tcgcares.com. My phone number is 303-394-1963. And either Prayers in My Gumbo or Tears in My Gumbo can be purchased at prayersinmygumbo.com or tearsinmygumbo.com.
prayersinmygumbo.com, tearsinmygumbo.com. So it's so wonderful. So I'm excited to witness your journey and it unfolding. And I ask my guests the same question at the end of every podcast. And the question is, what do you want women to know about awakening and their journey of awakening?
What I want women to know is that their awakening is not a mystery. It's not a secret. You know, it's in your heart. It's inside of you. And for maybe a lot of different reasons, you've been ignoring it or pushing it back because it's not somebody else's idea of what you're supposed to be or where you're supposed to be. But to trust what's inside of you. Trust that small, still voice. Trust the whisper, because what you need to know is already within you.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you are such an example of living that truth. So thank you so much for being here. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful that the world gets to experience through your words and your speaking and your books the gift of caregiving as a path of spiritual awakening and transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cynthia. Love you.
And so, ladies, please come back often. We are putting up new podcasts all the time. And I want you to meet the women. I want you to see how each and every one took one step at a time. And the same is true for you. I'm grateful to be of support to you. I'm grateful to have a platform that I can share with you, because you are here by a divine appointment. You are magnificent. You are powerful. You are dynamic. We'll see you soon.